Shardvixen here, and it is What Does the Vixen Say? I mean, you can't say that without wanting to go beep, 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 beep. You know, interesting thing about that song, that every sound that they did in that song is typically the human verbalization of what foxes would actually say. So, alright, I did my hair again. I don't know if you guys can see the color in it or not. Let's see if I turn around. I'm changing up my thing. So, it's one side. This side here is a red-pink wash over the green and blue, which turned out really pretty. Kind of a weird dark magenta. I don't know if you guys see that. And then the other side, of course, is that hot pink kind of thing. So, Archie, it was pink that I went with. Didn't have any other blues. Somehow, though, I've got a bunch of hair on the back here that's shorter than the rest of my hair. And I think that it was trimmed a long time ago. See how short it is? It was trimmed a long time ago and then didn't trim. So I don't know how good this setup is. I'm making an animation table, kind of. Let me see if I can show you guys. Kind of down here. So the issue is trying to get the light source to work better on both the vlog. I really need a light over on this side, I think, shining down on me. Shining. Sun shining down on me. No, so I really need that, but I don't have it right now. So the question for today, this series, if you're new, because I am putting these on Twitch, is where you, yes, you out there, ask me a question, any question. I don't think there's any question I wouldn't answer unless it was harmful to other people in some way. Or if it was very, very personal, like, what's your middle name or something like that. So, that would be the only thing. Only because, as I've said before, and I'll say it again, I wear a mask for two reasons. One, because this is a persona of mine, Shardvixen. And two, because I have, in my past, worked with other people and their confidentiality. So I can't be just floating around talking about things. Because somebody might decide I'm talking about them, even if I wasn't talking about them. So, alright. I've had caffeine today. That means super ramble. Actually, this isn't ramble. This is a focused question. And the question is, if the world was ending, what kind of people would you take? So we're going to play it the way that I was taught in logic class. You can take 12 people with you, including yourself. So 11 people. Though I don't know if I'm a skilled person. And then you're going to base it on the fact that I think the scenario for most of them is some nuclear accident has occurred and you have 8 hours in which to pack everybody up and shove them into this utopia style underground bunker that's going to last for 500 years. But you can only 12 people can fit. That's the bummer of it. And it it has everything you're going to need supposedly to survive. So who would you take? So for me, okay, the first number one person I probably, you got to think about is who would you want to take? And in the past, they've given you things like police officers. Well, it's a logic question. So, and to find out how you feel about society. So they give you people like a police officer, a lawyer, a judge, that represent justice, a doctor, a veterinarian, a psychiatrist, a medical field. They give you these set things to determine how you actually perceive a utopian society should be. Or just a society. But I didn't do that. I didn't write down the ones. I'm just going to do it off the top of my head because I'm that kind of person. But if you wanted to do the question with other people, you would have, you have to have more people. So that would be 6 people there, right? And then you would have maybe a farmer, a hunter, and an outdoors person. Okay, but you'd have to have a bunch of them, and then you have more of them. And some of them would have same like skills, like the hunter, a outdoor sports person, a hunter, and maybe a police officer would all know how to use a gun. So those are those kind of things. And then the setup too is that you need to establish a society. Because once I answered, why can't we just have anarchy? Everybody run around. I mean, with 12 people, it wouldn't be problematic, unless of course you ended up with a serial killer or people went crazy, stir crazy. They might hurt each other, and then that would be the end of it. And then you'd want some type of way to fertilize people, because the whole intent of taking people into a bunker and leaving the rest behind is that you are somehow going to create the next human race. Now, that poses an interesting concept, because the answer to the question could be you could take nobody. I'm not taking anybody, because I think the human race should go down the tube. Or you could say, I'm just going to take people and willy-nilly, and they can decide what they're going to do. Or maybe one of the skilled people you take is a biochemist, a geneticist, someone who can clone people. Maybe that's your intent. But in the format, I'm not sure that a biochemist is actually even put into it. I would take a biochemist. Why? Well, first of all, a biochemist can help you modify food if that's their specialty, even if they're base specialty. In a biochemistry, you learn stuff about modifications of genes, both in plants and animals, before you go off on your own little tangent of speciality. If there's a biochemist out there and that's not true, please go ahead and talk about that. But that's how most, here in the United States, that's how most degrees work. So if I wanted to go to school to be, I don't know, an animator, I would first have to take art. That would be my AA level, would be art, and maybe some film classes or video classes, but not to the intent of being extremely specialized in it. And sometimes it'll flip, like more video and photograph classes and less a little bit of art, depending on what part of animation I was intending on doing. And I might be able to get a job, or I might be able to produce stuff at an AA level. But if I go and get a bachelor's degree, I'm going to get a little more specialization and a little less of overall, but you still have to take overall classes like English, math, a science class, a humanities class, which cracks me up. And then your master's degree, of course, is even more specialized, and also still has, not in English or science or that kind of thing, but something mathematical, something scientific, and something humanities. At least one or two, but it'll be more towards the field you're doing. And then, of course, the doctorate is just totally, depending on what kind of doctorate it is, but for the most part, a doctorate is mostly geared towards your specialty, like fine-tuned to that. Here in the States, it could be different other places. I've not been other places to go to school. Anyway, so let's go back to the question: who would I take? Well, I would want to take people. For me, and this was always the question I asked, and my teacher always said I was overthinking it, but in reality, because remember, it's an exercise on how you think, but not technically about the end result. It's not really, doesn't matter who you take, it's why you took them. So if I was to say I'm going to take a biochemist, it doesn't matter that the biochemist is in my amount of people that I'm going to take, because the other part of this question is then other people get to chime in. Usually you're in teams, maybe like 3 or 4 people, a group of people, or everyone gets to pick their own people, but then you have to argue, and at the end of the class, or the thing you're doing, I'm sorry, my face is bad today, at the end of the exercise, everyone has to argue it for the instructor or the person who's presenting it to determine exactly who gets to go into the bunker. Now, like I said, I've heard it where you take 9 people. I've heard it where you're allowed to take 18 people. Sometimes they like to do it odd numbers because they're counting, they want to see how you're going to stack up for reproduction. So let's go with the idea that I am going to take 12 people, 11 people, myself included. Because is the option that you don't go and you just pick out the 12 people, which is a very self-sacrificing concept. And some people think that way. They think ahead and say, oh, okay, I meant to pick out 12 people, but I'm not going. I found that really interesting because I just assumed I was one of the 12. That's kind of egocentric of me, isn't it? Anyway, and egocentric means that it stands from my ego. Everything is outwardly. Everything, the world revolves around me. That's what that means. I know a lot of people are like, what does that word mean? Egocentric means that you are the center of everything. So, and I'm kind of that way anyway. And arrogant to boot. And my daughter says pretentious, so. But pretentious to me means like, you're the name dropper. That's what pretentious means to me. You're the person that's like, I know that person, or I know this thing, or I'm connected to that event. Again, I'm not staying focused. All right, so biochemist would be somebody I would take because you could modify your food, you could modify your people, you could modify a lot of stuff. But then you have to assume that if you're picking these people out, this was another question I had, and I tell you, I just drove instructors nuts when we did logic stuff like this because I was overthinking it. So if I'm taking a biochemist, are they going to have the state-of-the-art equipment is going to be in there? Is that why only 12 people can go? Because the place is filled with every imaginable thing you might possibly want to keep 12 people alive. I would want a biochemist. I would want a chef. And the reason I want a chef is not because I need somebody to cook, but I need somebody who knows food and would know how to make food nutritious and delicious, or at least delicious. And you could take a dietitian, or maybe you just maybe you just throw out the chef and take the dietitian. So let's go with the biochemist dietitian. I have to point out that in some cases, they don't tell you the sex. So they don't say you need to take, because I'm female, but I'm old. But let's say you're in college. You take 6 females and 6 males with the idea of reproducing. But if I have a biochemist and the idea is to reproduce humans through a genetically cloned system, or at least IVF? Intravenoto fertilization. Did I say that right? It's not Veneto. It's something else. Sorry, my brain can't get that word in my head. I know it's IVF is the initials for it, and something fertilization. So what if that was my goal? Then it wouldn't matter for the sexes. But let's just go with the base during my time. I often wonder about those questions in logic class where they give you the vaguest amount of information, and then you are like, well, does that mean I need 6 females and 6 males all at the age of reproduction, or do I need, it doesn't willy-nilly and I don't care? That's what you add to that. So I'm not going to do gender at the moment. I'm going to go with the idea that my biochemist is going to recreate human beings in the most prominent thing. But we'll get to that in a minute. All right, so I want the biochemist. I want the dietitian. I'm going to assume, this is bad of me, but I'm going to assume that my biochemist and my dietitian know how to cook, because I know how to cook. As long as they give me the stuff, I can cook it. And if you doubt that, you should check out my Alchemy 101, which will be up pretty soon on my Shardvixen's channel, which is going to show you how I cook. Just good enough. That's how I cook. It's how I craft, and that's how I cook. And that's how I play video games. Just good enough. Anyway, so maybe my channel should be just good enough. Let's go back. So we have the biochemist. We're going to have the dietitian. And I want to have not necessarily like an outdoors person, though I argued this point and it didn't come up. I want to have a weapon specialist of some type. I would prefer to have someone who knows the ins and outs of not just guns and how to make bullets. I mean, a lot of hunting people do. I knew lots of people who were hunters that made their own bullets. It was a family pastime. But also knew how to do bows and knives and things like that. So maybe a weapon specialist and a blacksmith. So that's 4. I have 4 people out of my 12. Well, 5 because count me. So I've got 7 more people I could take. 7 more people. I definitely would want a medical doctor. And possibly a psychiatrist. Though a medical doctor and a psychiatrist would be a plus. But that's rare. So, I mean, most psychiatrists have some degree of medical knowledge, but not to the point that you'd want a medical doctor. So I would want a medical doctor, a general practitioner, though that could be problematic in the long run if you had other serious problems, because a general practitioner, at least here in the United States, tends to be less knowledgeable than someone in their specialized field, of course. But we'll just go with that. So we'll say a medical doctor. So, and then we're probably going to need a veterinarian. Unless, of course, all of our food is synthesized, then we're not going to need a veterinarian. So then that becomes that question. Is all my food going to be synthesized, or am I going to have cows, or are we all going to be vegan? Let's opt for all of us to be vegan. Oh my God, to spend eternity as a vegan. But that's it. Maybe we can make synthetic food that tastes like steak but isn't steak. That would be my goal. So I want that food they have in Fifth Element, where she puts the little, I don't know if you've seen the movie, but she puts the little pills in and then pops it in the like microwave thing, and out pops her meals. That's my goal. So I'd want that. So we have our biochemist, we have our dietitian, we have our medical doctor, we have a weapons specialist of some type, and a blacksmith, and then myself. So we're at 6. That leaves me with 6 more people. I would want somebody who, like me, is artistic in mixed media. Why, you say? Because then we could have paintings, and that person has to be teachable. Like, not teachable. The person has to be able to teach. So we would have mixed media, art therapy for those people that are going to get claustrophobic and pissed off that they have only 11 other people to deal with at any given time for the rest of their lives. I mean, if you think about that, it's kind of odd. Though, I think if we look at family units, for the most part, you are dealing with the same people for almost a whole lifetime at some point in time. But you do have other people that intervene, unless, of course, you live in a very isolated area of maybe 50 people in your town, and that's it. I would still think you'd get outside that town. I don't know. I know there's very small towns in California. I've been to them. But most of those people have, at some point in time, been past their borders of their town to the next bigger town. Just because there's not enough stuff for them in their town. Okay, we have to hurry up. So we have our biochemist, our dietitian, our psychiatrist, our medical doctor, our, we've opted not to have a blacksmith. Did I already say that? And our weapon specialist? So that's 6, right? Yeah. So who else would you need at that point? Well, 7, because that's me. So we have 5 more people that I could add to that. What specialist would you need? I would need I'm going to say this horribly bad. Horticulturalist, which is the person that studies plants. Specifically in edible plants and maybe medicinal plants. So, and probably understand marijuana. That would be somebody I would want. Do I smoke marijuana? No. But I do find that the benefits of marijuana on the human body and mentally can be very effective. So we'd want to be able to grow our medication rather than having to rely on our medication. So that would be 8. So we're down to our last 4 people. You know, I think somebody trained in music would be good. So that would be 9. And then we'd have room for 3 more people. What else would we want to? What else would I need at that point? I got my biochemist, my dietitian. Maybe a chef at that point would be good because they could do creative stuff with the food that the dietitian came with and eating, you know, especially if it's synthetic food. That would be the thing. All right, so then we're at 10. We could get to have 2 more people. Who would you take for 2 more people? Maybe we would do 2 people who are, man, I don't know. At that point, I don't know who the 2 people I would want to take. Maybe I can't think of what they do, but it's where they take patterns and information and make the most logical computer specialist. We'd want a computer specialist, both a hardware and a software specialist. So that would be my last 2 probably, because one or the other, because we'd want to have computers, of course. But then that comes to this point, would the computer person be able to do the power? So would they also be able to control the power? So would we need would we have to have a computer specialist that was a hardware software specialist and be able to build computers and fix computers and have someone that was a power generator kind of person? The mechanic. We would need a mechanic of some type, I think. So I would have to interview for a computer specialist that do a little bit of everything and then go with the mechanic. And that would be it. Because I would be, of all the people there, I would be the one person that has the least amount of usefulness, except for behavioral. That's what I am. A psychiatrist wouldn't necessarily look at the behavioral unless they were a cognitive behavioral psychiatrist. That was their field of expertise. I would probably want somebody that was more into the emotional side, and then I could use my expertise as a behavioral specialist, and that would be, I would be able to know when people needed to go see the psychiatrist. Psychiatrists think everybody should come see him anyway. And I don't know if I want a psychiatrist. A psychologist might work just as well, because we no longer have to worry about medications in that aspect. We'd want somebody who would be knowledgeable in the psychologist tends to be more about, maybe we just need a therapist. A therapist who's knowledgeable in test taking and being able to do medication. That would be the plus. All right, so that's it. That's the end of the world people that I would be taking. I would want them to be the best in their field that they could be. So this one was a little long. I apologize. And I will catch you all on the flip side. Oh, and the next one is about physical loneliness. Give you something to think about on that. Unless I change my mind in the process. You know, sometimes I come up with a different idea that I really want to do. But I write my ideas down so I don't lose them. Because I lose things. All right. Catch you all on the flip side.